Cast June 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all our channels, Periscope, iTunes. And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. And of course, visit us on thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net for the latest and greatest when it comes to sports. And today's sponsor is Insta Bible app. You can get the Insta Bible app on the iOS App Store. Download it today. Share a verse to the world. Ryan Krista is my co-host today. Ryan, welcome to the Sportscast.
Thank you, Santiago. It's glad to be here on a nice Friday afternoon.
Yes, Friday afternoon, of course, in New York. Things are opening up. Are you on phase 2 right now?
Phase 3,
or
actually.
Still in phase 1? Oh, you phase 3, so that means the bars are open.
Yep, we can eat inside, outside, and we're 1 week away from hopefully being able to do some recreational activities. So
today we have a special guest today, obviously a special episode on Liberty Flames, Liberty Basketball, Liberty University. Of course, that's where I graduated, and Ryan. So it is our special alma mater, just like how Justin is with Alabama. And we have these episodes ever so often. Ryan, introduce our guest for today.
We have the beat writer from the News and Advance, Damien. How do you say your last name?
Sordelett.
Who covers Liberty University athletics and does a great job keeping everybody up to date on what's happening with all the Liberty sports teams.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. It should be a fun episode to talk about some hoops and some sports and some football.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
first we'll start off with, where sports kind of stopped in March collegiately, and that was with the basketball team winning the back-to-back Atlantic Sun championships. Could you give us a little bit of insight into the four seniors that kind of were the core of that team the last couple of years?
Yeah, it goes without saying that this team wouldn't be where it was at without Georgie Pacheco-Ortiz at point guard, Caleb Holmesley there at the wing as a hybrid 3-4 who was truly the best player in the A-Sun arguably the last 2 years. And then Scotty James and Mayo Baxter-Bell on the posts were instrumental in what Liberty was able to do with that pack line defense. I don't think the two of them get the credit for how well they played defensively, especially Baxter-Bell. You could probably go back to the NCAA tournament game against Mississippi State, and he had several key plays there down the stretch when Liberty was making the comeback behind Holmesley's phenomenal offensive performance there in this latter part of the second half. Baxter-Bell really set the tone in there, and I think you lose a good bit of your team in those four. I think this program's at the place where Rich McKay doesn't rebuild, he reloads. And I think that's what they've done with this incoming recruiting class and the pieces they have coming back, led by Elijah Cuffey, who will be a senior leader on this upcoming year's team.
How is the 2020 class looking so far? Have all the roster spots been completed?
Yeah, all the roster spots are filled, all four freshmen on campus. It's a dynamic class led by Isaiah Warfield, who's one of the highest rated recruits Liberty's been able to get, even higher than Kyle Rode. He has the ability to play like a Lavelle Cabell. He's going to be a lockdown perimeter defender who I think over time will be able to find his scoring touch as he progresses and as he gets more comfortable with this system. And McKay Ivy, I probably butchered his name. He's going to be a real sleeper. I think he's going to have a dynamic impact there in the post. He's a really physical 6'7" forward, versatile as well. But I think he's going to fit the mold of like a Scotty James. He's going to be a workhorse down there and be able to do a lot of things really well for this team. And he'll have the ability to learn behind guys like Blake Preston and Shiloh Robinson. And that will help them out tremendously. And I'd be remiss to not mention Jonathan Jackson and Drake Dobbs, two wing players who really are dynamic. And Jackson's, if that name's familiar, his brother played at North Carolina, was ACC Player of the Year, and has been in the NBA. So to be able to get an athletic wing like that who will probably fill into what kind of like Caleb Holmesley did. He's going to be a versatile guy who is a little bit lengthy for, a lot of players who are going to match up against him, and be able to take them off the dribble. So that should be a good class to bring in. And then bringing back Keegan McDowell was a big thing for Liberty. He's a guy who's been in the program for a while, and even though Liberty needed a post player, probably was going to go on the grad transfer market to find a post player to help in the transition of getting Preston and Robinson acclimated to what they want and the level of play that they want them at. I think being able to bring in a guy like McDowell who can come in and be a leader on this team. He's been in the system for 3 years now. He'll be a redshirt junior this upcoming year, and just being able to bring him back was big for them, even though it doesn't fit in terms of roster management for like what positions you may need. Just the fact he's been around will be a big bonus for them.
So the last game was the championship game against Lipscomb, which closed out the Vine Center. Damien, what are your favorite moments from the Vine Center?
Well, I don't have as many as you guys did because, I went to George Mason University, and then I was on the Liberty beat for the 2012-13 season, and then only back on it since like the 15-16 season. So I don't have as many of those fun moments, like say having Clemson come to the Vine Center for that 24-hour marathon, tip-off marathon, 10, 11, 12 years ago. I think one of my favorite moments so far at the Vines it's actually a loss, but watching what Chris Clemens from Campbell was able to do there. I mean, he was truly a special player, and getting a chance to see him in person, be able to produce some highlight reel plays, that was special because he's going to have a chance at the NBA sooner rather than later. He's a dynamic talent. But from a Liberty standpoint, I think that game against Lipscomb to end the tenure at the Vine Center was really special because that kind of sounded like what Richie McKay has been talking about in terms of fan engagement and the atmosphere and the true home court advantage ever since he returned. He talked about the days when it was his first stint there, of how that place was electric and it gave Liberty a home court advantage. And, for the first few years that he was back, you really didn't see that. You would get smattering of fans here and there. There'd be a big attendance, once in a blue moon, but to hear the crowd like that, was really special to hear that, because I think that was what he had envisioned when he returned. And it was a culmination of 5 years of investing in the program and getting to the point where the fans, the students as well, wanted to be there.
Tell us about this new arena. I believe it's going to be open up for next season. Tell us what have you heard and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on pace to be completed at the beginning of October, which means the volleyball season will be played there. There was some worry about whether they were going to have to find a temporary place for them to play during the season because it wasn't going to be ready. But thanks to creative scheduling, where the volleyball team is going to open its season with lengthy road trips and then come home for, I believe it's October 6th for an opener. That allowed them to have the volleyball season fully played there. And it's going to be a $65 million palace where they're going to have all the amenities that you want in a 4,000 seat arena. And that means for an average Liberty game, the average attendance the last few years has been between 2,800 and about 3,000 or so. So it'll seem more full, and by being a more full environment, you will have a louder crowd atmosphere, because the Vine Center, you guys have been there, 9,000 seats. It's a huge arena, and especially with the dome layout, it's hard to keep that noise packed inside there. So the fact that it's going to be a smaller, more intimate arena, that will definitely really help as well. So it'll be right adjacent to the Vine Center, and it should be a good arena. I think they're finishing it up. I've seen a couple of videos of what it looks like inside. It's still not finished yet, but it's taking shape, and it's going to look really good once they get that completed and get some games in there.
All right. So thanks for the update on the arena. Is there any word on who the first opponent will be? I know a lot of times we try to make a big splash with your first game. And also, who are going to be some of the challengers in the ASUN next year for Liberty? basketball.
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. And I really thought NJIT was building the pieces around Zach Cooks to make a splash this upcoming year. But the fact that NJIT is now going to be a full member of the America East Conference here at the beginning of July, that just goes right out the window. I think Lipscomb is going to be really tough. And Asana Sajula is a special post player. I know it did not show in the championship game. He looked kind of flustered. Really, Scotty James and Miles Baxter Bell got the best of him in that one. But he's a special player. And the way Lenny Akoff works the offense through him, they're going to be at the pieces around him that will be that will make Lipscomb a really formidable opponent and not a team that makes a run through the tournament like they did this past year. They'll be a team that will be at the top of the league standings during the season. Then I think Kennesaw State, I know the record the last couple of years has not looked good, but they had the top rated recruiting class from the ASUN this past year. And I think Abdul Rahim is doing a really good job of recruiting. And I think he's going to have that program to the point where they're going to be a lot better than they were this past year. I don't know if they'll be like top tier, but I think they'll go from bottom rung to middle of the pack. And I think Stetson, if they don't lose a lot of pieces in the transfer portal, I think they'll have a chance to contend like they did this past year. In terms of the first part of your question, I haven't heard anything. John Rothstein from CBS Sports has said that Morgan State was supposed to visit Liberty this year, and I reached out to Morgan State to try to see if I could get a copy of the contract. They don't have an executed contract as of now. My guess is if once that gets finalized, that might be the opener, and it's not the big splash that you want. But if you go back and think of the year after Liberty went to the NCAA tournament in 2013, that team that had 20 losses and made that big run, they opened the home calendar against Division III Randolph, a crosstown team. So, and Richie McKay has brought this up. It is hard for Liberty to schedule opponents because of how good they are and the fact that teams don't want to play them because they know a loss just won't look good from a national perception. Just think of what happened to UCLA a couple of years ago and Vanderbilt this past year. I mean, they lost, but I mean, Vanderbilt got better as the year went on. But, initially people weren't happy that Liberty went down to Nashville and won. So that's going to be I think Morgan State's going to be the opener. We've seen Liberty's got road games against Radford this upcoming year, Missouri. They're at Vanderbilt, they're at Notre Dame, and then they have the two games down at High Point for the Legends Classic that will be held in that sub-region. So right now, most of the schedule is on the road. And the last few years, Liberty's played a good number of games at home in the non-conference slate. So we'll see how the rest of the schedule fills out for them.
With this team going into an NCAA tournament, what seed could they really challenge? Is it the fifth, fourth seed? Where is Liberty at?
Liberty right now, based on the perception of the ASUN, and if we look at this team, and are you asking regarding to last year's team, the 2019-20 team, or this upcoming year's team?
This upcoming season.
They'll probably be where they would have been this past year, like a 12 or 13 seed. And you just have to think, we don't know if Liberty's going to make the NCAA tournament because there's a lot of unknowns outside of like Elijah Tuffy, Darius McGee. Where are you going to get consistent scoring from? Is Blake Preston ready to take that role and become, a guy who plays Scotty James minutes? Is Shiloh Robinson going to be a stretch four? Is he going to play inside? And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered for this team. And I think it'll take some time during non-conference to see how that plays out. And I don't think Liberty's going to have the marquee wins like it's had the last few years. But I think once they get in the conference play, they'll be a whole lot better. And, I think we'll see them if they get to the NCAA tournament and get that automatic bid, in between a 12 and a 14. And anytime you get into those seeds, there's always the chance for upsets. And we've seen with the NCAA tournament, any top seed can be got. And thanks to UMBC beating Virginia, that that proves anywhere from 16 to 9 can get a win over a higher ranked seed. So it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out. And I think if Liberty comes together and this team plays at the potential that I think they could, 12 would probably be realistic if they do well during the season and get the automatic bid.
And how would it have been for this past one? Obviously, like the tournament got canceled, but it would have been like the same as a 12 seed, you think?
12, maybe an 11. The losses that they had to Stetson and North Florida on the road really hurt. And the Stetson one in particular. That knocked them down in the net ranking quite a bit. I really thought they had an opportunity to get an 11 or a 10.
I think that's Ryan. Let me mute him. I hear like the street.
Yeah. I thought a 10 or 11 would have been realistic before that Stetson loss. But I think they could have gotten to 11 based on how the other conference tournaments played out. So that I think, they're still a double-digit seed, but they would have been, in a matchup where, if they got the matchups to fall their way, I've always said they could have been a Sweet 16 team. They had the pieces in place for that.
Was going to ask you that next question. How deep would that have gone? So but now I know. Sweet 16 is quite interesting. This basketball team. Ryan, any more questions on the basketball team?
No, I think Damien did a good job covering, this year and the upcoming year. So let's move on to the gridiron. Let's go back a little bit. Take me back to your thoughts initially when Liberty hired Hugh Freeze to be the football coach.
I thought it was a home run hire. And a lot of people outside of Liberty didn't know about his visit to Convocation earlier in that year, that January, where he came and spoke with them and had the opportunity to kind of open up. He and Jill were both there, and they kind of opened up about they didn't reveal a whole lot about the texting situation and all that stuff. But he did ask for forgiveness from the Christian body there. And he kind of opened himself up. And that was something that I think endeared him to the Liberty fan base, is that they had a chance to see him, kind of see him in a raw state, in a state of a man who once was on a very high pedestal and then all of a sudden just got knocked off. And it was in coaching purgatory for a couple of years. So I think they knew the type of man he was. And then once he was hired and they knew the type of man he was, then they looked back and saw what he did at Ole Miss, Arkansas State, Lambeth, and they knew he had the potential to get this team to the point of where they are now. And, they're bowl champion, albeit the Cure Bowl is kind of like one of those lower tier bowl games, but still bowl win. And in the first year of being bowl eligible, to get that done, that speaks volumes to what he was able to do in such a short time frame. I mean, he didn't have a full recruiting cycle. And he had to rely on, what the previous staff had done under Turner Gill in terms of recruiting. And I think he was able to get the most out of it. And this past recruiting class, the one that they just got into campus earlier this week, that's going to be a big one for them. They got some really good pieces on there. So I think recruiting wise, they are, heating up the trail pretty well. And, they've gotten some good pieces for the 2021 recruiting class already. And I think we might see another one pop up here soon. And another offensive lineman if the commitment goes the way I think it's going to go. So they're making some trails on the recruiting, and that will only help as they try to move up the ranks in the FBS level.
What are your predictions for the football team? How many wins and losses do you think will happen?
It'll depend if we play a season or not, and also
That's right.
it depend if we play a full season. If we're looking at the schedule that is in place right now, I'd say 7-5 is very realistic, and that would be bowl eligible again because of 2 FBS teams on the schedule. I also think 8 wins is not out of the realm of possibility. And I think they have an opportunity to get one of the 3 ACC teams on the schedule. Virginia Tech will be rolling out a new defensive coordinator. That's the season opener, and Liberty will also be having Malik Willis under center, and they haven't really shown that type of offense at Liberty yet with what Willis can do in the RPO game. So that might be a game where Liberty could get, because Justin Hamilton still getting his feet wet, calling plays. But if you look at, how Syracuse and NC State both did last year and they kind of regressed, Liberty could get those. And, that's later in the season. Syracuse is middle of the season. NC State's the next to last week of the regular season. Those are games they could get. And there are also games on the schedule that Liberty can feasibly get in terms of wins. So I definitely think 7 wins at the minimum, but I think 8's very realistic, an 8-4 season. And then, with 6+ bowl tie-ins, that will help in the fact that they, instead of going to just the Cure Bowl, they could go to like the Myrtle Beach Bowl, or I know that's one that people would love from Lynchburg would love to go to, because, you get to go down to Myrtle Beach around Christmas time, and who wouldn't want to do that?
How is the culture at Liberty football now with Fraze? Is it a SEC culture feel? Like, what have you noticed so far?
He's tapered the expectations quite a bit, so it's not like SEC level, like we're going to expect this. I think he's going to tier those expectations. So based on the talent he gets in, you'll see the expectations level steadily raise and raise and raise. But he has a SEC quality staff, and Nate Hampton, the quarterback from Davie County High School in North Carolina, who verbally committed this past Sunday, when I talked to him on the phone the following day, he's like, I asked him, why'd you choose Liberty over 2 SEC offers and a Big 12 offer? He goes, Liberty's got a Power 5 staff. Hugh Freeze coached at Ole Miss, and he's just not going to bring any random coach in to work with him. He's going to bring in guys who are going to, coach at a very high level. And I think we've seen that with Hugh Freeze and the guys he's brought in. I think Scott Simons was a very underrated hire as defensive coordinator. He's a guy who was very successful at the Division II ranks, and he helped Memphis really excel and get to that bowl game there in the 2018 season, and as the linebackers coach. And so Freeze, made the right hire in getting him as defensive coordinator, because I think Scott Simons has done a really good job with that defense and getting them prepared each week, and he's set really high expectations for them. And I really think that the coaching staff has done a good job. And I think as we see more recruiting classes come in and he's able to build the roster to a full FBS caliber, you'll see those expectations start to increase, and you'll probably see him want to play more Power 5 schools on a yearly basis. Not the 2 or 3 that we're going to see now. You might see them play more because they'll be able to punch at a higher weight class.
All right. So we initially last year, and you kind of alluded to it, Freeze had a saying, that this isn't quite an FBS roster, which makes sense because most of these players were recruited, as FCS players under Turner Gill. So you've seen a lot of the way you're saying, you've seen a lot of his talk though change, a little bit more higher expectations because he's bringing in higher quality players. And we know we're going to lose Buckshot Calver, Gandy Golden. And you talked about Malik Wilkes being what you perceive to be the starting quarterback. Do you not think Jonathan Bennett will be the starting quarterback next year or compete for it? And also, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Bennett will compete, but Willis is the better talent. Willis transferred in from Auburn. And while Bennett has been recovering from the patella tendon rupture in his left knee that he suffered in that freak accident celebrating with Brandon Robinson after Robinson scored on his first collegiate play against Hampton, I saw some video of Willis working at a quarterback camp in Georgia over the past couple of months, and he looks a lot better, a lot more of a polished passer. We know what he can do running the ball because that's what he did a lot of at Auburn when he got in there. But I think he has taken a step forward in his passing. And what Freeze was able to tell us recently is that Willis was able to take this opportunity where things were kind of shut down to work on his fundamentals, to work on a lot of the cut-ups that Kent Austin sent him of what he needs to do, and then go to a quarterback camp and work with these guys on what he needs to do to refine his throwing motion and become a more complete quarterback, because I think the stereotype was he was a runner, not a thrower. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. And he's an upperclassman who has experience playing against SEC programs, which I think gives him the upper edge. And From everything I was told last year about how he handled the redshirt year, was he was a leader there in that quarterback room. He was willing to help any of the younger quarterbacks with anything they needed help with. And I think that goes a long way toward establishing yourself in that quarterback room. And so I expect him to be the starter. And I think Chris Ferguson will probably, the main transfer will probably be the primary backup, because he does have a lot of experience. And that allows Bennett to kind of not rush in his recovery, but to get healthier, get stronger. And then if you see opportunities to play him throughout the year, whether it be, second half, if you have a big lead, or you just need a change of pace guy to come in, you can put him in there, because he already has burned he's already used his redshirt year. So you want to get him as many games as possible. So, I think they'll open preseason camp with Willis as the number 1 and Ferguson as the number 2. But it wouldn't shock me to see Bennett, competing for the job, because they're going to have an open competition. Whoever's the best one in camp will be the starter September 5th against Virginia Tech.
Quarterback competition is always good. Ryan, quick 60-second question and also answer. You got one more?
Yeah. So I think, if I watch a lot of SEC, I watch a lot of college football, and I know Hugh Freeze is known for this, up-tempo offense. And I feel like he was in second gear a lot, probably because of depth issues at Liberty. You expect after another recruiting class and Malik Wilkes to really speed up the offense this year, quicker pace between plays?
Oh, this will be 100 times faster than it was last year. And he had to tailor the offense around Buckshot Calvert, and Buckshot's a pocket passer. He doesn't run a lot. So they tailored the offense around him. Now he's able to kind of go into what he wants to run offensively. And if you look at all the quarterbacks on the roster, and we'll go Willis, Ferguson, Bennett, and then you look at the guy like a Nate Hampton who just verbaled, they're all the same stature. They're all built to where they can throw the ball and they can run it, and they're bigger bodied guys. And that is something that suits him well. You go back to when Ole Miss was really good, Chad Kelly. He was a bigger guy who could run and throw it. So I think starting this year, you'll see that offense in full hyperspeed mode. And that's something that, Liberty fans should get excited for, because that's what they envisioned when they hired Hugh Freeze. And now you're going to see the offense really get the chains taken off it, and you'll be able to go into third, fourth, fifth gear if you need to.
I got one more thing, to say. From upstate New York, I'm from Rochester, and probably the best high school player I ever saw in the area, in the last 20 years has been Josh Mack. So I was very excited when we got him on the roster. I have big hopes from this year, and I think, with, a running quarterback and Josh Mack, and a gathering of, I think, good wide receivers. They're not Gandy Golden wide receivers, but I think this offense will take the next level.
Yeah, I think Josh Mack's the starter. Hugh Freeze has already told him he's the starter, and he was going to give him fewer reps during spring because he had earned it. I think Javian Lofton at wide receiver is going to be a real shocker, because he's going to be a guy who's going to probably slide in and start opposite of CJ Yarbrough and be a dynamic home run threat. They were really high on him. And I think he's a guy who just got on campus and will be a guy who will really, turn everyone's attention toward him. And I think Mack, and then you got Frank Boyd and Troy Henderson behind him. I think running back wise, they're in good shape. And I think Mack will be a guy who can probably do what Frankie Hickson has done the last 2 years and be a workhorse and be 1,000-yard back.
Well, we're running out of time, but before you go, which we'll have Ryan still after you go. Poll question of the day: what is your favorite watch? Apple Watch, Rolex, the Swatch, or the Tag Heuer?
I'm wearing an Apple Watch, so the Nike series. So that's an easy question to answer.
Damien picks the Apple Watch. Damien, what is the best way to reach you online to talk to you about Liberty Sports?
You can reach me at Twitter at Damien Sordelett. If you need me, the Sportscast guys have tweeted out my handle. You can go find it there, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. My email address is on there. Everything else you need to get in touch with me about is there, and I hope to hear from you guys. If you have any questions about Liberty, I'm hoping to start up the Flames mailbag again soon. So might start that up and have you guys submit questions, and we'll have some fun answering them.
Pretty exciting times for Liberty Sports. We're seeing a huge increase in basketball and football. But Damien, I appreciate you coming to coming on as our guest and giving us great updates.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a blast.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you, guys.
And Ryan, you're still on the line.
I'm here.
Wow. Well, what are your thoughts over the interview with Damien?
Well, I mean, he gave a great recap, of the basketball season and looking forward to the next season. I think a lot of Liberty fans, we saw what this team did the last 2 years, but we saw, 85% of the scoring graduate, in May. But he gave a lot of hopes for this team going forward, and especially how great Rich McKay is recruiting, and the term he says, reloading, you're not rebuilding. So I think that's great, and also gave great insight to the football program, especially the quarterback position, what we can look for, and, just how, Freeze, views this team, and, how we were able to kind of get Freeze as our coach.
Yeah, what I see that he's living in a good moment right now with sports, Liberty Sports. Obviously, football team is good. Rich McKay is going into the Sweet 16, maybe a little bit higher. But Freeze, he's stretching his recruiting muscles. Like Tyler Turner always tells us, recruitment is key. And if you don't have a good recruitment department, you might not be successful in football.
Yeah, like Damien had said, when Freeze got hired last, right after the football season 2 years ago, or a year ago, he looked at the roster and said, this is an FBS roster. So he's going to take a couple of recruiting classes, and it was a short amount of time, and he produced Liberty's by far the best recruiting class they've ever signed for last, February, and this class that, they don't have a lot of volume, but they got a lot of quality in this class. 4 commitments are all 3-star, but, quality. So, the future definitely looks bright. It's a matter of, how long we can keep Freeze, and Lynchburg will be, how high this team goes.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. It's quite interesting that in football, there's time for you as a coach to be there for years compared to other sports like soccer. You only have like a year or two.
Exactly. In football, I hate when football coaches get fired after a year or two in college, because you're only bringing in, when you got an 100 person roster, and you can only bring in 20 people a year, you're not going to make big changes within 1 or 2 years. It's going to take a couple of years. But when you got a name like Hugh Freeze, it gets you into a lot of houses, and you can look at the NFL draft and how successful his players, even up to last year, where, all those wide receivers taken from, Ole Miss into the NFL, those are all recruited by Hugh Freeze. So you can tell what type of players he gets, and the type of accomplishments they had. So, I think he's definitely going to keep building a lot of momentum on Lynchburg. I just hope, he can stay long enough for us. I don't know if we'll ever be, we're never going to be, obviously, a playoff is just not the realm, but, breaking strides to compete, overtaking BYU is a high, mid-major, college football team. That was a great benchmark last year to show, we're close to BYU. We're not quite BYU, but we're close,
You think joining the conference is a good benchmark to get into?
No, I think, what Damien made good points, when our team gets better, and it's going to take, I would say, if we can get 2 more good recruiting classes out of Freeze, the talent level is going to be there. It'll be, like you said, we might be able to beat an ACC team next year, but chances are they're probably going to lose all 3 ACC games next year because the talent differential is still different. But we keep on building, the talent level is going to get smaller. And when you go to, but with our name and the money we have, we in our staying facilities, we can get, bigger marquee teams to come. Like, we've got games, they might be 7-8 years away, but we got Virginia Tech coming, BYU coming, Duke, Wake Forest, all coming to Lynchburg, which were almost pipe dreams, not that long ago. So the program's building in a great way. But if you go into a conference like the Sun Belt or Conference USA, which are not bad conferences, they're Division I, but you're very limited in your scheduling outside your conference. So it's nice to play a couple of those teams during the year. But, by being a not independent, it lets us get on our own TV contract with the ESPN, which we do have. Not a lot of people know that because most of our games are on the digital version of ESPN right now. But, a recent interview with Ian McCall, Liberty's AD, he gave the insight that, don't be surprised if we get a game or two on ESPNU this year. As more people hear about Liberty, and as better the team gets, the rate, ESPN doesn't care that, if you want to be on ESPN, you got to get the ratings, i.e. BYU. So don't be surprised, that if we get a game or two of our home games on ESPNU this year.
And also we talked about Liberty basketball, and they're doing pretty good as well. Obviously, getting good recruits and Richard McKay. But is the basketball team going into a good direction, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, I think the conference is getting tougher. Atlantic Sun, we walked into it 2 years ago, and it was us and Lipscomb in North Florida. Now I think a lot of these teams are closing the gap. Like you said, Abdul Rahim, who was, I think, a top 5 pick years ago in the NBA draft, gets hired by Kennesaw State. He walks into an absolute dumpster fire last year. They go 1 and whatever, how many games they play. But he, at the same time, he could care less what's happening last year. He's going on into the Atlanta region, and he's bringing in some studs. They will have as much talent as Liberty has on the roster next year, just in 1 year. So the competition is going to be there. Like you said, Stetson's going to be up there, and Lipscomb brings back some pieces. But yeah, we can't expect Liberty to go to the NCAA tournament every year. It's not that type of program.
Really?
I
thought it would be kind of like,
it's going to take a little bit longer, Santiago. It takes a long time to build that reputation up,
But is the ASUN, obviously, I don't think the buck stops there. I guess they want to go to a different conference eventually.
I obviously, we'll if they ever get accepted into, years ago when the desire to go to FBS came about, everybody, went for the Sun Belt. And unfortunately, for political, religious reasons, they got voted. They chose Coastal Carolina to be in the Sun Belt over Liberty, which, for whatever reason, doesn't make economical sense because Liberty brings in a lot of money, and power. But, for whatever reason, they went the other route. And I think if they would have gone into the Sun Belt, then all the sports would have been in the Sun Belt. And we're, there's a much higher caliber of basketball and especially baseball, Olympic sports. The Sun Belt does very well. But football, I think football, we're much better being an independent. I kind of like where we are. ASUN
like Notre Dame.
Not like I said. I think like for football, I think we're in a caliber below Notre Dame. Obviously, that's not even a question. We are maybe 2 calibers below Notre Dame. We're in that, like, we're shade below BYU, but we're above, the other independents being, UMass and New Mexico State. So the future definitely looks bright. We got to keep building that fan base in Lynchburg and beyond. We're getting smaller arena in basketball, but we're getting a bigger stadium in football. So we need to bring in those fans. And obviously, next year is not going to be a season to judge attendance because obviously I think attendance will be restricted in every place, if not no fans, But I think, and overall, Liberty Athletics is probably in a better spot than we've ever had. Ian McCall, coming from Baylor, there's a lot of questions, what his role was in the Baylor scandal. Apparently, he checked out, whatever, but, this is the guy who built Baylor into what was a power conference dumpster fire into, going into BCS bowls and football and, perennial, Sweet 16 and above in basketball. So, he can make changes, he can, he's
move
great
the needle.
Yeah, he moves the needle. He raises money. Santiago, the nicest college football stadium that probably no one knows about is McLean Stadium in Waco, Texas.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, well, you should look it up. It's the most beautiful stadium, all built by Ian McCall and fundraising, and it probably doesn't hurt to have Chip Gaines as one of your biggest boosters too, but that's another story. But
something to definitely look at. Of course, we'll be covering Liberty sports more on the Sportscast.
It'd be nice to get Damien in, during football season. I don't know.
Absolutely, week, but, I'm definitely open to that, and hopefully get Nick Pierce. Maybe you could get him because he won't talk to me. So
No.
maybe he's hearing this. Anyways, let's go into this week's headlines or from yesterday and today. NCAA Division I Council approved 6-week practice plan for football. They approved it on Wednesday. The 6-week program practice plan for football begins in July and will transition teams from the current voluntary workouts amid the coronavirus pandemic to the typical mandatory meetings and preseason camps to prepare for the 2020 season. Ryan, we're getting things rolling with college football.
Santiago, 2 weeks ago, enthusiasm was the all-time high for college football, for momentum for playing. I don't feel that right now, Santiago. With testing, we're getting a lot of negative tests. There's some pushback. You got Dr. Fauci saying, players got to live in bubbles. There's a little less optimism about college football, being full steam, next year. But that being said, we're still taking, precautions, and adjusting the schedule. This 2-week, kind of real getting people slowly into the prospects of playing, into football shape. That's why we have the voluntary workouts right now, but not, again, it's voluntary. So this 2 weeks will be able to get people into meetings and watch, together, but, and giving teams a chance to monitor and get more testing, and probably isolate people who do test positive for COVID. And so once they're 2 weeks, isolation's over, they can get back into game shape.
So far, there's been cases in Alabama, OSU, and Texas A&M, and probably some other schools that we have not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at Houston, Santiago, they have suspended all summer workouts across the university, and that was only over 6 tests. So, there's a lot of precaution going on. Like I said, I don't know. Positive tests are always the worst situation. You're dealing with 18-year-old kids who can shake off any, it's just, we got to get that perception, get people in isolation, get them away from people, and let's move on. That's what the NBA is doing right now.
Star safety Jamal Adams requests trade from the Jets. Adams is frustrated with his contract negotiations. He has requested a trade, according to ESPN's Rich Cimini. This player is huge for the Jets. I know the owner has expressed a lot of favor towards him. What are your thoughts, and where do you think he'll go?
I mean, this is one of the top safeties in football, Santiago. This is what the Jets are building their whole defense around, this guy. So they lose, basically, I don't know if it's savable right now. There's been, I think this is a couple weeks coming, maybe months coming. He's expressed dissatisfaction, with management. I don't think he was a big fan of the Adam Gase hiring. So, and I think he just wants to, I think he's seen the writing on the wall. I don't know if he agrees with, the general manager. So I don't know if he's going to get that long-term deal in a couple of years that he really desires. Or if he wants to go to a place, because he's even requested a trade where he's going to go to a place just to play out the rest of his contract. He's not requesting that he sign a long-term deal to go somewhere. So that's big too. So, if it's players look, teams looking for, a stopgap, for, they can get a Jamal Adams if they're a Super Bowl contender and they feel like that's a missing piece. I think a team to really watch out for would be the Steelers. So I feel like adding him and Mitchell Fitzpatrick back in the secondary, that'd be great for them.
I think the Steelers would be a great spot. I've been hearing the Cowboys as well.
Cowboys too, they'd fill in that role. Yeah, like you got to look at teams, Santiago, who are going to be way over the cap in a couple of years. And the Cowboys, with Dak Prescott, is whenever he signs this contract, Santiago, and I think he will, along with, and they just signed Amari Cooper, there's only so much salary cap to go along, so you can find a player, who's still on the low salary cap number because he's still on his rookie contract, Jamal Adams. What a find for a team.
Something to definitely look at. NBA players can choose to wear a smart ring that may help detect COVID-19 symptoms. Included in the NBA's plan to restart the 2019-20 season at Walt Disney World in Orlando is that players will be given the option to wear Oura smart rings to detect if and when they begin showing symptoms of COVID-19. Of course, the Oura smart rings are usually, able to track your sleep and your steps, but now they can detect symptoms. How about that?
Wow, technology is crazy, Santiago. I think what we're doing, we're just trying to get players any reason to keep playing in this season. They got a lot. There's a lot invested in this NBA restart, Santiago.
You really think there's going to be a fallout with the players? Some of them will not show up?
We'll see. If you asked me last Friday after this players call meeting, I thought it was really in jeopardy. But we haven't, other than Kyrie, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley, you haven't seen a lot of current players speak out. They might say they might have joined it, but I haven't seen many players saying they're not going to play. But I guess they got to let their teams know by next Wednesday. So we'll know sooner or later. I have heard though from, I think, 2 different Miami Heat players saying they're all on board to play. So that's good for your local hometown team.
Yeah, and also to piggyback, majority of the NBA players need to play to earn that paycheck.
San Diego, there is so much to lose to the NBA players for not playing. It's funny that Kyrie Irving is the one, leading the momentum on this, because this is a player who is injured and it wasn't going to play in to begin with. And basically he's trying to, start a movement to not play. In a sense that he's going to get free money by the NBA just playing, because he's still going to be on the roster. If they don't right now, if the way this salary is scheduled, if they play this NBA restart, which more than likely they will, players only lose 15% of the salary. If they don't play, they will lose up to 35% of the salary. And this goes for all 30 teams, not just the 22 playing. So the 8 teams that aren't invited, they're really pushing for this NBA restart. So there's a lot for these players to lose. And that's why, all the reps voted to play this, because this is a player friendly, money situation for the players. And basically all they got to do is show up and stay in Disney World for a couple weeks.
Yeah, and he also said last week in the players' call that he's willing to start his own league. I've heard that argument for a while now, that players could start their own league, and there'll be some attention to it.
I did. Kyrie, I think, likes to hear him talk himself sometimes, but I don't know. I mean, this is a guy who thinks the Earth's still flat. So I mean, what can you say about him? But
I forgot about that.
The NBA, there's too much money invested in the NBA. There's too much money to be gained for these players. I don't think there'll be another league started. I doubt it. Doesn't even make any sense.
But whoever wins, will they have that asterisk feeling compared to the 1999 season, sort of?
It's different. I don't know let's say you got a team like who gets really hot. Let's even take our. Well, let's say a team who hasn't had much success, maybe not say this year. Let's go with our friend John Ross's Portland Trailblazers, who've been injury bugged all year. Now they're going to be full strength for the first time all year coming back in Orlando, Santiago. So you're going to say a team that really, had a pretty tough year, who probably wouldn't have made the play, was not likely to make the playoffs because they wouldn't have got all their injured players back by March. Now all of a sudden, they're getting all their players back healthy.
100% healthy.
Yeah.
And that's for all the players.
Yeah.
Who's still injured right now? I don't think one person's injured unless they just had surgery in March.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I would love to see Kevin Durant come back, because I think you could take a team like the Nets, who've been underachievers all year.
He could be like 80% ready, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he's been ready since, April. But, I think there's this, rushing back,
precautions. Yeah, they want precautions, because he's probably brittle, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think there's this, there's a camaraderie with Kyrie too, and they don't want to. I don't know. It's just
it's another thing. Well, yeah, the NBA season will kick off or relaunch in July 31st, live from Walt Disney World. Players are complaining about staying in a hotel for too long, but some of them really need it. Hey, I'll stay at Disney Hotel. I'll take that.
Yeah, for millions of dollars, Santiago will stay Disney. And
Major League Baseball Players Association on Thursday proposed a 70-game regular season schedule, a plan immediately rejected by MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. These guys are not agreeing to anything right now.
Oh my goodness, Santiago, the biggest dumpster fire I've ever seen.
This is 1994 all over again.
Yeah, they come out, was it Wednesday, after spending all day together Wednesday, they have a framework of a deal. And then all of a sudden, Tony Clark, who might be one of the worst player reps for a union, comes back, to, they have a 60-game schedule already in play, or proposal in place. Rob Manfred comes out and says, a framework of a deal, they just need to cross their T's, dot the I's, and we'll have players in camp hopefully by beginning of next week. And then all of a sudden, Tony Clark goes and tells his player reps, and they're not happy. So now they're back at square one. They want 10 more games. For some reason, that the owners don't like that. So,
what? As of right now, June 19th, 2020, do you think there will be a season this year?
Nope. I think that this is where Monday night after this Return to Sports ESPN program, where Rob Manfred, basically said he doesn't think there's gonna be baseball, and they can't get along, Then they go and spend all day together to, him and Tony Clark, the player union head, and they had this deal, and then there's nothing, after that.
Now we know how
this
complex
has got to be worked out.
This is the most complex player union league relationship from all the sports. Now we know who is the worst.
Yeah, there's some disconnection, I think, in the NBA right now, but as a whole, the connection between Adam Stern and Michelle Roberts, the players rep, and Chris Paul of the actual player rep.
You mean Adam Silver?
I got Adam Silver, Michelle Roberts, who's the head of the union, and Chris Paul, who is a players rep for the union. There's a lot of connection between all these,
They're one
sources.
happy family.
Kind of, that's how you're able to get it. I think if you ask people back in beginning of May, would it be an NBA restart? I said probably not, because everything had to work
issue
out
for the
perfect.
NFL, like approaching towards September.
I don't think so. I think there's unless a lot of things happen, with upticks in COVID. I think NFL is going to be okay.
Well, Major League Baseball is still in limbo. NBA has a plan. MLS has a plan. NFL has a plan so far.
And don't forget about the NHL, Santiago, the quietest one of them all, but they just get it done.
They get it done really easy. Of course, if you cannot, if MLB doesn't happen, you still can watch the Korean Baseball League, which is shown on ESPN every morning. You can't watch SportsCenter AM, but you can watch the KBL.
Yes, but sports are happening around the world, Santiago. It's good to watch some EPL. I'm sure you're probably watching a little bit right now as we speak, maybe.
Yes, as we speak. We had two good games yesterday. On Wednesday, Man City beat Arsenal. And, of course, the Sheffield United tie against Aston Villa 0-0, where a goal would disallow goal line technology. But I haven't seen the whole stat of the ball completely cross the line. But I'll definitely will let you guys know what happens. And finally, Alabama and Ohio State agreed to have a home football series for the 2027 and 2028 seasons. The two powerhouse programs announced the matchups on Thursday. The first game will take place in Columbus, Ohio on September 18th, 2027, with the Buckeyes coming to Tuscaloosa the following September 9th. What? Two powerhouses. I've never seen this type of home openers like that.
Yeah, I got two words for you, Santiago: playoff expansion. You see all these games popping up. When you see these games popping up, that means by that time, ADs really think there's going to be 8 teams in the playoffs. So these big name teams aren't afraid to lose a game, especially, what this does is it draws in TV audience, draws in money. People will be, at the stadiums. So that's a money making in the present, but not, they're not going to lose, the risk of not making the playoffs. I think, for years, in the current, this is why we get some of these weak non-conference schedules right now, because teams are afraid to lose games. So, they're going to play, that's why Liberty's got three ACC teams, scheduled because teams are afraid to lose games, so they're going to schedule the lower tier college football teams. But now I think in 2 or 3 years when, you're going to see these schedules who are starting to take shape, where teams are playing multiple Power 5 teams in each season. So, the future of college football, I think it looks bright, as we stand here right now.
Something to definitely look at. Of course, expanding the college football playoffs, I think is eventually going to happen. My plan is having 6 teams. Tyler agrees with me. Ryan is more of an 8-team playoff team right now, I think. I've heard.
I think so. 6 is just weird. I don't know. I like
the whole wild card NFL. It works then. It could work for the college football.
The thing with that is it's you're it's very subjective, because the NFL is done by your record. It is what it is. I mean, the playoff is done by committees. So yeah, I don't know. So that's where
anything else before we head into polls and predictions?
I guess this is a big couple weeks, in the scope of, things are, we're reaching the peak of things opening up right now across America. So let's keep this virus down, low numbers low. And so we can hopefully have sports as normal as possible, as the year closes and into next year, Santiago.
Yeah. Once the NFL approaches, that is the real test, is the NFL. How they're going to handle it will be limited fan base, but definitely keep an eye on the sportscast.net. Every headline we spoke about, go to the sportscast.net. All the headlines are there. Predictions: Tottenham Hotspur versus Man United today at 3:15 Eastern.
Yes, I never can go against the Empire, and that's Manchester United.
PGA Tour, Harbour Town Golf Links. Who do you think will win this tournament? We got Simpson, DeChambeau, Connors, Palmer. Right now, Simpson is number one right now.
He's in the bring it around here. Say, let's go with Simpson. Yeah,
Simpson is predicted. The winner is $7 million. You can watch it throughout this weekend on CBS channel or on the Golf Channel. So it's pretty exciting. Ryan, who is your favorite Garfield character? Garfield, Odie, Nermal, or John Arbuckle?
John Arbuckle, yeah.
John Arbuckle is at 14.3%, but Garfield is winning at 42%. Odie tied with Garfield at 42%.
Oh.
Quite interesting. And what is your favorite watch? Apple Watch, Rolex, Tag Heuer, or Swatch?
The most useful for me is the Apple Watch. But
why?
A nice Rolex is not bad for a nice night out.
If I had to choose, it would probably be the Apple Watch. Rolex, Tag Heuer, Swatch. That's more of an expensive dinner in Switzerland or something. But but Apple Watch is becoming the fanciest watch. But if you ask someone else, they might not think so. Ryan, what is the best way to reach you to talk to you about Major League Baseball Commissioner Ron Manfred?
I'm Mad Dog Report 18 on Twitter. And just keep up with the sportscast. Like Santiago said, all the headlines are getting up there. So,
yeah. And who has been the best commissioner throughout this whole? Well, there's a lot. I would say Adam Silver.
Adam Silver, he's put together. He had a tough situation, but like I said, it's quiet, but they're getting things done, and that's Gary Bettman in hockey.
And of course, you can reach us at thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net. For the latest and greatest, or on Twitter at the Sportscast1, the Sportscast1. Listen to our interview with Bill Curry. It's definitely trending a lot on Google. And we're hearing news about Charlie Strong's buyout agreement. Calls for UCF to pay him $2.98 million. Real quick.
That's a lot of money for a mid-major, not a Power 5 team to pay, but
it is what it is.
I don't know. We have to dig in this, but it doesn't look good for Charlie Strong right now.
Charlie Strong. We'll see what happens with him. Ryan Krista, always a pleasure. Liberty and Sports, Sportscast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Santiago. God bless.